Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine, talking about our juvenile justice system, part of a ongoing examination, a series of reports we're doing here at News Channel 5 called Broken, about juvenile justice in Tennessee. We have with us Lionel Matthews, Davidson County Juvenile Court Clerk, Ashford Hughes, the former Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer here in Metro, and Shane Foster, the Men Together program with YWCA, of course played at Vanderbilt, and great panel. Let's just go right back to the phones. Let's go to Mary. Hello, Mary. Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Yes, I've listened to all three of the young men talk, but I have yet to hear one of them say, where is the parent's responsibility in these children? Now, if you got a child at the age of 12 to 17, they're underage. These crimes that I've been looking at on TV is happening like at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. They should be in the house. Where are the parents? They should be accountable for their children. So why is not nothing said about the parents?
All right, we asked a little bit about that, but why don't each of you address it? So we hear this a lot. Where are the parents? This is happening late at night, early in the morning. Where are the parents? Is that an appropriate question to be asking?
So I'll start. I think that parents should be held accountable, and they have a role to play, but I also think that there's shared accountability, and that's where I think the perspective that we've spoken from tonight. I hear from parents all the time that want to intervene or try to intervene with their child's behavior and don't have the resources or places to turn to help them do that. And there's not a lot of programs or nonprofits that actually focus on programming for parents. The Family Center does some of that, and there are nonprofit organizations that may have a program here or a program there. But no one is solely focused on providing those resources for parents that need it. We have a lot of parents that may have become parents at a young age. We have a lot of single, especially in the African American community. I think nationwide, 70% of African American children grow up in single parent households. And so parents need help too. Especially if they are being accountable and if they're asking or seeking help, we have to provide those avenues for them. And I think we have to create a safe space for parents to be able to say, I do need help. We can't shame parents into thinking that just because you don't have all the answers, you had that child, you should have all the answers. We can't shame parents into thinking that. We have to make it comfortable for parents to say, I don't know the best path forward with my kid.
And sometimes parents say that. Yeah. And the system that you say isn't broken, it's designed to do what it does, maybe doesn't help them.
They hit a brick wall.
I've seen parents say,
cases.
I need help, and then what happens is not helpful.
Yes. I've seen it too. I agree.
What do we do about that?
We need to turn it around. We need to break down those barriers that some parents are facing. And we also need to make sure that parents are, in being held accountable, we're being sensitive to the needs of the family and the family structure and some of the things that are happening holistically. Back to the community piece that Asher and Shane both eloquently described. We have to have all hands on deck to help these kids. Parents are not excluded from that, but parents aren't the sole answer, and we can't just leave this on the doorstep of the parents. We can't leave it on the doorstep of the schools or one entity. It's everybody, or we're not going to fix this issue.
Shane, I feel like you answered that to some extent. Where are the parents when that question comes up? But Ashford, when you hear that question, where are the parents? What do you say back?
I think a lot of the times the parents are there. A lot of parents are working multiple jobs, right? So I'm not taking, as Lionel said, any accountability away from the parents, but I'm a product of a single parent home, right? So a lot of the times, as my mother was working 2 jobs while trying to finish school at UT, there were times where I should have been in the house at 12 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, but I wasn't, right? But it wasn't that my mother wasn't involved, that she needed to be punished. I had to go through those trials and tribulations, unfortunately, of being a young male in the inner city, and hopefully, and thank God, I found my way out of that. But I don't want to always put the blame on the victims. A lot lot of parents are doing all they can to really make a better way for their children. And sometimes it goes back to those root core environments, right, that they're living in, that they need help, right? That is where the city, that is where government can come in and partner with the nonprofit community, the business community, and be innovative. And how do we find ways to keep community centers open beyond 12 o'clock? How do we find a way to be innovative with the way we use our libraries to be places where they can go and learn how to be entrepreneurs in a positive manner? We cannot just blame and say the parents need to do more and more. A lot of our parents are doing the best they can in environments where wages for a lot of people in specific entities aren't going up. Right? So you have parents working 2 jobs, living in these communities, right? And then when you start to see gentrification happen, then you start to see families and communities and safety net structures, as Shane talked about, being dispersed across the county. So how does this parent that needs to help to get her son from school, how does she do that when the person that was helping her now lives in Madison, right? There's a whole list of accountable measures to take place, but I can't just sit here and say it's all and only on the parent. I've seen it firsthand working with Lionel with the REAL program at Oasis. A lot of these parents are asking the city, asking for nonprofits for more help and more support.
Shane, you said that's not a question that's asked all across our entire community. Maybe that's a question that's just asked in certain parts of our community. And maybe it's a fair question, but are we getting to the point where resources can be allocated in such a way that it can help parents in other parts of the community? I guess, you eloquently answered her question, I feel like. And how do we move beyond what you described, how that's not asked of other parts of the community?
Well, I think it's difficult based on the structure of the system that exists right now, right? Like I take something as simple as childcare, for example. Adequate childcare costs a minimum of about $400 a week, right? So in certain communities, they're only making $400 a week. So to say to them that they have to shoulder all of this responsibility on their own is a lot for anyone. And regardless of what community that you live in, if those were your exact same circumstances, you'd be making some of the same decisions that you see parents making. It's not a matter of whether or not they want to be in their kids' lives or they want to be able to provide more for their kids or whatever the case may be. But as was stated before, the system in some ways is not necessarily set up to cover all of the needs that are there. And when we're making decisions as it relates to what we're voting for, lack of voting, when we're putting resources in certain communities and certain schools. I mean, you got kids in metro schools right now that don't have books that they can take home. That's not the parents' fault, and in some cases, it's not the principal's fault at that school in particular. From a budgeting standpoint, they can't control what their budget is. There's so many aspects of this that have to be fixed, and if we all don't come together with solutions to say this is a priority, then it doesn't get fixed.
So are we reaching a tipping point where we're about to do that, or are you worried it's just talk and people move on and we're not there?
I worry, honestly, that we talk a lot, but we don't put our actions behind our talk. That's my biggest concern. And as I work with more than 600 kids in this school system, I look at the impact that it has on them when we, the adults, don't stand behind the words that we say across the board. If we say we value the kids in this community, right, then that should show up in our budgeting. That should show up in how we vote. That should show up in where we're spending our extra resources. That should show up in how we're advocating for each other. But right now, we don't have a community that truly looks at it as one whole community. We look at this thing and we say, well, Brentwood's over here, Franklin's over here, you live in Belmead, that's over there, whatever school system you go to that you can pay to go to, or if you're in a charter school over here, we don't all look at it and say we're all in this together. So how can I help you? If there's a gap over here, I have a surplus, how can I help you? Right? The more we're able to come to, and it's grassroots, I get it. It's me being able to help my brother right here. It's me being able to help my brother over here. But that's what it takes, because us doing all of this talking, unfortunately, we haven't put our actions behind that at every level.
And I want to ask you the same. They're telling me I have to go to break, but I ask you quick. Do you think we're reaching a tipping point, or are you afraid we're just talking and the action isn't there? Are we reaching a point where there'll be action?
I think it's a combination. I think we have to continue to keep driving the narrative. We have to keep, as leaders within the city, have to keep talking to the mayor's office. We have to keep, as a city, listening to the grassroots community. We're at a tipping point. We've been there, and now I think if we don't do something now, then we're going to go over that tipping point, right? And the community is somewhat combustible that we just can't keep doing this, right? And they're going to be demanding and hold everybody accountable to see this through. And I think the time is now. And this is also legacy building for the city as well, as we show what type of city we really want to be. Are we the most equitable city in the country? Do we care about the welfare of our kids moving forward? Now is the time.
All right, we're going to take a break. Come back. I promise to get more calls right after this.